The very last thing you just said, Jasmine. We're playing Never Have I Ever, everyone, and we're down to this last question. Never have I ever been arrested for something political.
I've not been arrested, but I have stolen a campaign sign because I knew it was misleading. It was about Project Next.
Okay.
That's just being a good Samaritan.
That's right. That's just being a good Samaritan.
It misled
That's a
me.
crime now.
All right, Jasmine, let's get us going. Oh, I start actually in my best soap opera voice. Tonight, the part of announcer, typically played by Amy Lowry, will be played by Jasmine Owen. The part of in-house comedian, Aaron Salinas, will be played by David Ronn.
Welcome to Over the Ledge Live, the podcast, the #1 and some say only political satire show based solely on the Texas legislature. I'm Jasmine Owen, and I'm glad you're here. Over the Ledge gives you a behind-the-scenes look at the shenanigans of the Texas legislature by decoding political headlines and legislators' behavior into easy-to-understand single aunt jokes. We're just as funny, but not as famous. Yet. We're so excited to bring you the season finale of Over the Ledge Live, the podcast, or as we say in the business, sign die, mofos. Let's meet our guests tonight.
I wasn't ready for that.
First up, we have comedian, athlete, and all-around good guy, Dave Ronn. Dave Ronn is an improviser, musician, and actor from Austin, Texas. He's technically on Instagram and Twitter, but he doesn't use them, and he walks around the neighborhood. He was a founding member of the musical improv group sensation, That Racket. Please welcome Dave Ronn.
Woo, thanks, y'all. Happy to be here.
Next, we have comedian Kirsten Anderson.
Kirsten. The cursor.
Kirsten Anderson. Yeah. No relation to Mr. Anderson, i.e. Neo. Kirsten is a 10-year resident of Austin and mother of Edwin Muffins, a geriatric terrier. While newer to the city's stand-up scene, her jokes have been prominently featured in The Office. Not the city office, just her actual office. For many years. Speaking of work, fun fact, as a child, she wanted to be a political talk radio host. Well, today, we've made it. You can follow her at Kirsten Anderson _comedy. Welcome to the show, Kirsten.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I have to ask, based on what I learned earlier, was Rush Limbaugh your idol?
I will just say this. I may have attended Dan's bake sale as a child. My sister might have been born while my parents were listening to Rush Limbaugh.
Woof.
I'm really big on reaching across the aisle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Our very special celebrity guest for tonight is Charlie Bonner, a youth voting rights advocate and communications professional working to engage a new generation of civic leaders. Currently, Charlie runs statewide communications and outreach at Move Texas, a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicating to empowering young people in civic life and tearing down barriers to the ballot box. As a spokesperson for the voting rights movement, he frequently appears in local and national outlets, including the Texas Tribune, the New York Times, National Geographic, CNN, and MSNBC. He's now finally made it to the big leagues with this feature on Over the Ledge. Please welcome Charlie Bonner.
Finally.
You did it.
We did it, Joe.
Thanks for being here, Charlie.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Finally, we have the creator and ruler of the Over the Ledge empire, who needs no introduction, Stephanie Serenity Now Chiarello.
Thank you. Yeah, guys, this is our season finale, which I want to make sure you all understand. I think we had 14 episodes this season. We have almost 45 episodes total. Wow. We made it into the finals of the best of. in the Chronicle, which we won't find out until May 20th. And someone today asked me if they could cross promote over the Ledge on their podcast. And they said something like, because your show is doing so well. And I was like, how do you know your show is doing well? But obviously, yes. So this is pretty big. And because it's the finale, there are no rules. Okay. Just have
perfect. Just how I like it.
No rules?
No rules. You see
Okay.
what I did to everybody else who's normally on this show? They're out of here, but so we can just do whatever we want.
Okay.
It's very impressive, Stephanie.
Thank you, Jasmine, for your support.
Just a reminder to save the date. We'll be back live and in person September 16th through 18th, 2022 at the Long Center. And because of our generous sponsors, we can actually pay the theater.
Wow.
And maybe for some costumes.
Yeah.
So thanks again, sponsors. Your thank you letters are in the mail. Stephanie promises.
That's right. I got 6 months, right? Isn't it 6 months?
That's right. Now it's time for What's Up in Texas with our host, Stephanie Chiarello.
Hello. Hey, guys. What's up in Texas? I'm going to do some new monologue jokes and a few classics from this season. In addition to local ballots, early voting is underway. I'm going to move this over here. Hold on. Gently, sweetly. Everything's fine. It's exactly how I want it. Maybe
Gently,
it's not.
sweetly. Everything's fine. That's
Right.
That's a good.
Okay. Just kidding. I'll be looking over here. In addition to local ballots, early voting is underway for 2 state propositions to lower property taxes for homeowners. When asked what the state is doing for renters, Governor Greg Abbott texted back, "Who dis?" Beto O'Rourke recently tested positive for COVID-19 and says symptoms are mild, just like the enthusiasm for his campaign.
Oh, it's true. Oh.
It is. Oh. State Rep Chris Turner says he won't run for House Democratic Caucus chair again, but he will be taking it with him per the caucus rules on musical chair.
That would be a better set of rules. That would be a better set of rules.
All right. Residents of Llano County are suing their officials for recent book bans, which they say are a coordinated censorship campaign. Llano County officials say they cannot confirm or deny it is quote unquote censorship since they have already burned the library's dictionaries. Side note, my older sister, Catherine, is the one representing these people who are suing their officials for the book bans.
Good
A
stuff.
hero.
Yeah, good stuff,
A
Catherine.
family of heroes.
Oh, bless you, Charlie. Yes, we are. And so humble. Humble is our middle name. All right, here are some classics that I was interested to see how quickly they are not relevant anymore. So I'll try to give you background if you need them. The Justice Department is investigating reports of abuse in Texas's juvenile prisons. I know. I hadn't heard about it either. I was so focused on children's genitalia and what sports team they should play on.
Still relevant. Still unfortunately relevant.
Whoa.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Governor Abbott signed off on the law policing transgender student sports participation, which the White House called hateful. It didn't bother Greg Abbott, though, because he's like a vampire. The only way to get through to his heart is to stab it with a stake. That was on our Halloween show, but I still think it's true.
Isn't every day Halloween when Greg Abbott is governor?
It's always after midnight whenever Greg Abbott is governor. The Justice Department is suing Texas over SB 1 for disenfranchising elderly, disabled, and limited English proficiency voters. Governor Abbott responded, "Glad to hear it's working." Some Texas Republicans are calling for a 4th special session after having banned mask mandates to also ban vaccine mandates. Mandate banning, book banning. I gotta say, they're really putting the ban back in the Texas Taliban. Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Last week, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick tested positive for COVID, but didn't tell anyone because he was afraid it would ruin his street cred for being the most negative politician out there.
Hey.
Daniel Patrick. Agricultural Commissioner and drunk uncle Sid Miller's campaign consultant was indicted for theft and bribery. I haven't had that much to drink.
Bribery. It's terrible.
Let's go back in time.
The corruption
Agricultural
here.
Commissioner and drunk uncle Sid Miller, the campaign consultant, was indicted for theft and bribery related to hemp licenses. Now, let's be blunt. Is it political retribution or just high time somebody caught on to his act? I hear the investigator goes by Bong. James Bong.
Yeah.
Yeah. 420 somewhere. Thank you. Okay, we got 4 more here. The head of the Texas DMV resigned due to the widespread sale of fake paper license plates, but I heard her resignation letter was just a napkin taped to the back of an underlit Camaro.
Yeah.
Yeah. A new law prohibits the state from contracting with or investing in companies that divest from oil, natural gas, and coal companies.
Dang.
Right? This is like McDonald's firing an employee for eating fruits and vegetables. Or Marlboro for firing an employee who doesn't smoke. Or the Texas CPS firing an employee who refuses to date a child trafficker. Now, this is funny because okay, there was a CPS employee who was dating a child trafficker and helping traffic youth who used to be trafficked. Thank you, Charlie, for recognizing this horrible story. All right. Oh, hey, last one. My favorite joke. How do you tell the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Why, Dave, it depends. Do you see it later or after a while? All right, there are 2 elections coming up, constitutional amendments right now, and then runoffs at the end of May. So make sure to be part of the 1% of people who vote in these elections. All right, that's it. Get me out of here, Jasmine.
So that happened.
Rude.
Yeah.
Rude.
It's in the script.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay, audience, let me tell you how this podcast works. On tonight's episode, Dave and Kirsten are competing against each other for the coveted Most Knowledgeable Comedian in Austin award. Comedians, please be aware that you can each phone a friend 3 times if you're stuck on a question. And by friend, we mean Charlie.
Ooh.
Great.
I'm like,
This
please
is-
don't tell anyone we're friends, though. Okay. No. Just a game. It's just a game, guys.
Oof.
I appreciate
we
your
go back.
honesty, Charlie.
Just
At least
kidding.
you get it right
Just
out there.
kidding.
I'd like to phone an acquaintance. Charlie.
A guy I know.
Yeah.
He tells it like it is. This award is given to the comedian who knows the most about Texas politics, according to the outcomes of the games on our show. Stephanie, show the award.
Ooh.
Oh my God, that's a real award.
You actually get this? That was the bonus?
I want that. Kirsten, I'm like going to take this seriously.
Dave, you have no shot. I know so
All
much
right.
about politics.
All right. Great. Yeah, me too.
Game
I'm
on.
nervous.
Whoever wins gets their picture taken with our special guest, Charlie Bonner. He will post a picture on his social media announcing that the winning comedian is Most Knowledgeable Comedian in Austin. Stephanie, did we ask Charlie if he's okay with this?
Obviously not. Based on his previous comment, I don't know if he's going to do this.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it
Okay.
goes.
All right. Again, I appreciate your honesty.
Our special guest, Charlie Bonner, is a youth voting rights advocate. Since it is our season finale, 14 great episodes, and 1 or 2 just okay ones, we're going to play 1 game instead of 2. This game is our favorite questions from each episode of this season's podcast. It's called Hodgepodge, which is very different from Mod Podge. That's a joke for all you crafty people out there. Like those who are into arts and crafts, not like evil people.
Okay.
A Mod Podge joke.
It's a yes. Yes. And don't even get me going
I
on
love this
Bond
show.
or E6000, okay? Because I will go there and we won't be able to get off there because we'll be stuck. Oh, that's a really crafty joke. Okay, so we've got one game instead of two. Lots of questions. Charlie is the guy you're allowed to reach out to.
Good.
Phone a
Not
guy.
a friend. The not friend who is there to help.
Not a friend. Okay, Kirsten, we're going to start with you in this game.
Okay.
This first question is from our first show with journalist John Moritz. The game was called Special Session My Ass. This is a multiple choice question. According to the Texas Constitution, how often is the legislature supposed to meet during what we call a regular session? Your choices. Every year, all year long. Every other year, all year long. Every other year for 140 days. September to May of every year, just like schools.
Ooh, I'm going to go September to May, just like school.
Wonderful. It's actually every other year for 140 days.
And still,
That's all right, Kirsten. That's okay. You'll get it next time. Don't
Something
worry.
new. Growth mindset.
Yeah,
Get that
that's
one.
great.
And Charlie's exactly right. You don't want them there another day.
a minute more.
Swear.
Not a minute
Not a
more.
minute more. Okay, this next question for you, Dave. It's from our episode with lobbyist Andy Cates, and the game was called Spooky, Scary, or Werewolf Bar Mitzvah.
Okay.
This was our Halloween episode, so we had a lot of great jokes. Okay, who is said to haunt the governor's mansion? A young Texas scout and a girl who was a Comanche. Ann Richards' beloved Pekingese dog, Chowder.
No.
Sam Houston, or Governor Abbott's soul.
Well, yeah, it's definitely Governor Abbott's soul, but I'm not gonna go with that one. I also really quick, there's no rules tonight, so I can ask my not friend Charlie for help as much as I want, right? There's no rules.
I guess so. I guess you're right.
Okay.
Um,
I just wanted to confirm that.
You think I spent a lot of time in the haunted governor's mansion?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Charlie and Greg go way back.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe when Rick Perry was there, Charlie, you spent more time there.
You know, I would I'd rather get this
A
one.
joke just for me?
I'd rather get this one wrong than ask for help. I'm gonna go with the scout and the girl.
Yeah, you're right. That's correct. All they say is a girl who was a Comanche. That really helps us out with our political awareness and wokeness. I'm really impressed.
Do you think that's why he hates kids so much? Like that place is just crawling with him. So
That's right. It's like, oh my
he's
god.
just got to ban trans kids as a result. Just as a vendetta.
That's it. That's exactly why, Charlie.
That's
You
the code.
nailed it. Okay, this is bonus, but not really, Dave. You don't really get a bonus here. Would you consider this spooky, scary, or werewolf bar mitzvah?
I love the category of werewolf bar mitzvah, but I would not say that a scout and the girl that's a Comanche is werewolf bar mitzvah. I would say maybe picturing like a ghost of a scout and a girl that's a Comanche. I keep saying girl that's Comanche and not a Comanche girl because I like that phrasing. I'm going to go with spooky.
I'm going to agree with you. Yes,
agree.
this is just an opportunity for us to say werewolf bar mitzvah as often as we possibly can. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope something later on is that feels comfortable being a werewolf bar mitzvah.
I think it should be a follow-up question to all of the questions.
Kirsten. This was from our episode with then barely Lieutenant Governor candidate Matthew Dowd. The game was called What and Why is Lieutenant Governor? So before becoming Lieutenant Governor in 2015, Dan Patrick had which of these jobs? A, sportscaster nicknamed the Silver-Tongued Devil. B, co-owner of a chain of sports bars that went bankrupt. C, owner of a talk radio station who signed an unknown Rush Limbaugh. You should perhaps know this information. Or D, all of the above. And I'm sorry to pick on you.
Ooh.
That's
I was
hard.
actually thinking about him the other day, Jim Patrick. I was, because I was like, he's gonna come up. I should research him, and then I didn't.
Bless your
I'm
heart.
gonna go D, all of the above.
You're going to get it right, Kirsten.
Yes!
Oh my
The
On the board.
artery on the board.
What a fascinating career.
Right?
He once got a colonoscopy on air, right? Isn't that?
A
Or
vasectomy.
a vasectomy. Thank you.
vasectomy
Thank you.
On air.
Really?
Yeah.
Does
Mhm.
that mean that he's pro birth control?
Ooh,
Sounds like it.
Oh.
for
He just
men.
likes, yeah. Or,
I'm pro birth control for men and women.
Yeah, me too,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. If we let men like control it themselves, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a vasectomy joke here and like your vast deference, but it's really hard to make
Ooh.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna be thinking about
Okay.
this later.
We can't. I'm sorry. I'm reading. Somebody commented, and I was thinking. Okay, all right. So the next one for you, Dave Ronn. This is from our episode with Blake Rocap, who is an activist with Avow, which was
Avow.
formerly NARAL Texas, which was formerly National Abortion Rights for All Ladies. I don't remember what NARAL stood for. All right. This is from the game called Woman's Right to Know, as an NO, because no abortions, but actually we make them read a pamphlet called A Woman's Right to Know before they get an abortion. So
Mhm.
how many women died from childbirth in Texas in
Ugh.
2018 per 100,000 live births?
Oh God. There's no suggestion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. No, like,
Well,
I'm
I
happy
was-
to take a shot.
Yeah, that's the question.
I'm
Okay.
no scale. I'm just gonna like guess a
Okay.
number.
1,252. And remember, this is per 100,000.
100.
19, 112, or 50.
Wow, that I really don't have a good bench. So this is women who died in childbirth
Yes.
of
Died
like
in
any.
childbirth. For any reason, but during childbirth.
Oh God, I feel like this is one of those things where it's like way worse than you would ever think in like a modern country. And so I'm gonna go with the 1,250. Was that one of the ones?
It was. It was.
Yeah.
I like the way you're thinking, but it was really just 19.
Great. Okay, good. Honestly, I'm glad I got that wrong because
Yes.
there's a follow-up. Okay.
Okay, but wait, there's a follow-up. Kirsten,
no.
this is for you. Okay.
What, she gets a
Same-
steal?
No.
Yeah.
That was your question. This is another question based on the same.
Okay. I
Okay.
can back up. Okay.
How many women died from abortions per 100,000 abortions?
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Does she get the
Right.
numbers
Right.
again?
Again, no
multiple
choices.
I'm sorry. Again. I'm just- All right. And this is in the United States. Okay. Where the one previously was Texas, but this is United States wise. And you're like, why didn't she use the same data? Because it's
And
not
per-
out there.
And per thousand
For
women?
100,000 births. That's just like
100,000
how they do
births.
stats. Was it 19, 0, 112, or not enough women died from abortions?
Oh God.
Oof. Oof.
Please don't
I mean-
say D.
Gonna go with. Well, I feel like 0 is very low.
Mhm.
I feel like there has to be some complications from most medical procedures. And yet, 112 seems high.
Mhm.
What, 100,000? And Dave's population was 1,000 women. Is that correct?
It was
100,000. He also
It
had
was
100,000, but it was just deaths in Texas only versus this is from
Nationally.
abortion. Women who died from an abortion.
Oh. Charlie, do you know?
Ooh, I'm not gonna say that I know, but my heart tells me 0.
I like it. Let's go with the heart. Let's say 0.
True story. So it's 0.73. I wounded it down. I wounded it down to 0. But the point here of this game was 19 women in Texas alone out of 100,000 died from childbirth, 0 from abortion. Do we have any laws that improve outcomes for women giving birth? No. Great story, Stephanie. I know. Okay, Dave.
That was good. I feel like I learned something, and Charlie is the expert. I'm very impressed.
He is, but he's not your friend.
No.
Okay, Kirsten. Nope, Dave. This came from the episode with Ag Commissioner candidate Susan Hayes, and the game is called The Commish. Who is the current commissioner of the Texas Department of Agriculture? Is it Sid Miller, Ken Paxton, Jeff Patterson, or Susan Combs?
I was expecting at least one silly name in there, like the Batman actor. It doesn't matter. It's Sid Miller.
Sid
Good
Miller
job.
is a silly name. He's not
Susan
a real person.
Combs? That's not a good superpower. Okay, same episode, Kirsten, different question. Which of the following is not the name of a Texas approved hemp variety?
Oh.
Okay. Mandarin pie, Bubba Kush, Your Mama, Violent Femme, Sweet Wife. Which one of those is not the name of a Texas approved hemp variety?
Wow. 4 of those are approved. 1 is not.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I'm
This
going
is
to
a
say them
tough one.
again because I
Yeah,
like
you
some
do.
of them. Mandarin pie,
Uh-huh.
Bubba Kush, Your Mama, Violent Femme, Sweet Wife.
I'm going to go with Your Mama.
How dare you know the appropriate answer, Kirsten?
It didn't seem
How
very
did
Texas. It'd be like y'all's mamas
Oh,
or something like that.
Great
Okay.
Your
point.
mamas. Yeah.
yes.
Great point.
There are a
Nothing
lot
but
of
Texas.
approved hemp varieties, and I
Yeah.
now aspire to have one named.
Violent femme.
Y'all's mama.
Y'all's mamas.
Y'all's mamas. Your mama, my mama, your cousin.
All y'all's mamas.
Somewhere Aaron is having fear of missing out.
Oh, where did he say that?
No, he's not listening,
Oh.
but I remember he really enjoyed this question in the past.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, somebody thought he needed to go get a dog. And I said, that sounds great. Okay. We're back to Dave. This is from our episode with activist Carrie Collier Brown, and the game is called The Primary Directive. Which elected official is the state official responsible for collecting taxes, overseeing the state treasury, and forecasting the amount of money that's available for the state's 2-year budget? And this is for Dave, yes? Is it the registrar, governor, attorney general, or comptroller?
Oh God, I feel embarrassed. Okay, since there's no rules, I think it's comptroller, but I'm gonna call the other person on this podcast who's being nice to me, I guess, Charlie.
That's correct.
Yeah, I'll go with comptroller then.
Yeah, you're right. Do you know the name of our comptroller?
Yeah, Charlie, what's the name of our comptroller?
I'm like,
No
yeah,
points here, Jasmine.
Do we
No
know that?
Do you know it, Charlie?
I'm
Okay.
like, if I had multiple choice, maybe. But...
Okay, is it Susan Combs,
Yes!
Van Taylor, Glenn
Glenn
Hager?
Hagar.
Okay, you got it.
Hagar.
Okay, Kirsten, you are keeping track, Jasmine. Yes.
I am keeping track. So far, both
Am I winning?
Dave and Kirsten are tied 3-3.
Ooh,
Oh,
okay.
nice.
It's anyone's game at this point. Okay, Kirsten, this next show is from one with Representative Jean Wu, and it's my favorite game that we play. It's called Tweet or Twasn't. And you've got to answer. I'm going to read you a tweet. and you're going to tell me if Wu, if you think he really tweeted it or if it wasn't a tweet. Okay. You know what? We may never play this
Were
game
you
again.
asking him if he tweeted them?
No, he was there listening to them, and he could be the friend. And we may never play tweets or twasn'ts again. Elon.
Right.
Oh yeah. R.I.P.
Okay, and I know
Not
this
dead.
is hard because you don't know Gene Wu, you weren't there, but it's my favorite game. So here's the tweet or twasn't. True happiness is finding someone who looks at you the same way Texas Republicans look at legislation to bully transgender children. Was that a tweet or a twasn't from Representative Gene Wu?
I believe it to be a tweet.
You would be correct. It was a tweet.
I may have listened to that episode as part of my homework in preparation.
I love it. I
was
love
great.
it. Look at that. Someone
that
using her resources. He is the best tweeter on Twitter. He is.
Yeah,
Good job. Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, Dave Ronn. And Charlie, I'm not going to pick on you here. Okay, but just between you and me, come in for the sidebar. Your tweets weren't that entertaining.
No,
I tried to come up with a tweet or twasn't, but they were like pretty like straight up message delivery. What's up with that?
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
All right. I even went to Instagram. I was like, can it be Insta and no, just
I'm not giving people the content they want anymore. I noted, feedback heard.
Okay.
Feedback heard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Still love you, but
Got to increase laughs per minute. Got it.
gotcha. But you have like 7,500 followers. What are they doing?
If I knew.
Owning.
Every day I'm like, get out of here. It's not worth it. Right? I'm like, if you leave, then maybe I can leave. Like we can all leave this
You're like, I don't know
together.
how to make my facts any drier. I don't know how to cut all the wit out of them any better.
Like, I knocked my ring light out with my jovious laughter.
All right, Dave. This was from the show with journalist Scott Braddock, and it's called Texas Journalist, Texas Candidate, or Texas Character on TV.
Cool.
So I'm going to give you a name, and you're going to have to tell me if they are a journalist, a candidate, or a character on TV. And you're both going to play this game once. So the next question will be to you, Kirsten. Okay, so is this person a Texas journalist, candidate, or Texas character on TV? Bobby Ewing.
Oh, just the name?
Yeah, I'm giving you Bobby Ewing, and you have to tell me, is that a journalist, a candidate, or a character on TV?
Oh, wow. There's so little information here. Charlie, can you help me out again?
Here's what I'm worried about being a guest here is I feel like I'm the only one that looks bad for not knowing.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, but do you know or you don't know?
I'm gonna say TV.
All right, I'm gonna go with TV. I'm trusting Charlie.
As you should. Yes, Bobby Ewing is from the TV show Dallas.
Dallas?
Yeah. Good job, Charlie and Dave.
Hey, that's why you're the guest, and I'm the comedian.
Ridiculous. I was like, it's gonna be a reporter, and I'm a comms person, and I'm getting fired. This is how it ends.
Okay, Kirsten, same setup. Your person is Candy K. Horn.
Charlie?
I believe that's a candidate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's
Yes,
go with that.
it was a Republican candidate for governor, Candy K. Horn. Yeah. Look at you guys killing it.
Yeah, all of us.
Equally.
Yes, definitely equally. Okay, back to Dave. This was from our show with Judge Amy Clark Meacham, a game called Judging Amy. Oh, and I didn't cut and paste the question, but I know the question. How many justices sit on the Supreme Court of Texas? 9, 12, 15, or 5?
I think it's 5.
It is 9. I am sorry. There's a Chief Justice and 8 other justices.
Yeah, we're good. I felt good
Okay.
about it, and I feel good about getting it wrong. So
Okay, I'm glad
That's
that you
the
knew there
attitude.
was a Supreme Court in Texas. Okay, Kirsten, this show was with Reverend Amelia Fulbright. It was called Faith on the Hill. You're going to tell me if a legislator said this, and this game is based on a research of the religion and the thoughts of legislators from 2015 with the Texas Tribune, or did Amelia Fulbright say this in one of her sermons? And here's the quote. Christian hospitality requires us to get our hands dirty with the work of hosting strangers right here in our midst. Was this Reverend Fulbright, Governor Greg Abbott, Senator Sarah Eckart, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, or Representative Eddie Rodriguez?
I'm going to go with the first option.
You're going to be correct. This was from Reverend Fulbright. A legislator absolutely did not say these words. Absolutely not. All right, we're close here, guys, to winding down. This next one is for Dave. This was our show with Jason Stanford, who is a communications
My king.
your king, and also co-wrote a book called Forget the Alamo. This game is called Forget the Alamo. I Never Knew It. Okay, I love that I forgot to cut and paste the question. I only cut and pasted the answer. So Chiarello. But I remember. So this was what was the Alamo in its past before it was the thing we know of it as?
Oh my gosh, great question.
Okay, was it one of several seasonal homesteads of the Cohiticans, the largest Indian groups living between the Rio Grande River and the headwaters of the San Antonio River in the 1600s? A private ranch owned by Martin Perfecto de Coz, the great-grandfather of Richard King of the King Ranch fame. A voyager's outpost built originally by the Frenchman Pierre de Alamode during his tragically unsuccessful attempt to claim what was west of New Orleans for the French in
Yes.
1711. Or a religious outpost of the Spanish Empire named Mission San Antonio de Valero. And I just want to give you this one more time. A voyager's outpost built by the Frenchman Pierre d'Alamode. Okay?
Yeah.
I just want to be sure.
Yeah, no, I think Pierre, he went further north and set up a lot of the French outposts in Oklahoma. So I know it's not Pierre d'Alamode. I'm going to go with the Spanish missionary. And I should, really quickly, I should know this. I grew up in Austin. I got all of the Texas education that anyone should, you should never, it was anyway, there's a lot of Texas education. And we spent a lot of time on the Alamo. And I still don't know what the Alamo was before it was the Alamo. And so I just want to point out, I don't know what I was doing for all that. So anyway, having said that, I'm going to go with the Spanish missionaries.
You have overcome all those obstacles, Dave. Yes, it was a religious outpost of the Spanish Empire named Mission San Antonio de Valero, which is why I always get my gas from Galero to remember the Alamo. Okay, we've got, we're narrowing it down. Kirsten.
I like that one.
Okay.
This is from our April Fool's episode with Senator Carol Alvarado, and we're talking about voting rights in Texas. So the Texas voter ID law states that A, the ID must have a photo of the voter on it. B, that a license from any state is an acceptable form of ID. C, if someone doesn't have their ID, they cannot vote. Or D, a Texas handgun license is not an acceptable form of ID. And I want to remind you that Charlie is working for voters' rights. So this is a do or die question for him.
If he doesn't get this one right.
Yeah.
Okay. Charlie, do you think it's C?
I don't think it's.
You don't think it's C? Okay. I wanted to try to put myself out there first to see if I was on the right track.
Yeah.
Stephanie, can we please repeat A, B, and D options?
Yes, you can. A is the ID must have a photo of the voter on it. B is a license from any state is acceptable. as the form of ID. C is if someone doesn't have their ID, they cannot vote. And D is a Texas handgun license is not an acceptable form of ID.
I'd like to backtrack my answer. I do think it is C.
You do think it's C? I think it's C. Okay.
If I'm understanding the question correctly, which is always a hard maybe.
What are you going to say?
Let's take it on faith. Let's go with C.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's actually A. You must have a photo.
I'm like,
on
what
it.
was the question?
It was that the voter ID law states. So if you don't have your ID, like with a photo on it, you can sign an affidavit that says you couldn't get your ID and you couldn't get the right and just say
reasonable impediment form. Yes.
thank you for knowing. Yeah. So
I don't know if Charlie works in voting rights.
I'm like, can I plug my one thing people should know about this also that
Please,
people don't normally know is people generally think that their address on their Texas ID needs to match what their voter registration is, and that's not true. And so if you've just moved and you still have your old address on your license, it is still good to use. It's your name and your photo that need to match. Mostly your name.
Okay. And what do we know about felons?
I'm like, what a phrasing of that question.
I don't know what I see on
in
TV
terms
mostly.
of their I mean, do you know any single ones? That's my first question. Second is, what are their rights as far as voting goes?
Yeah, folks who have been through that process just need to be off paper is the technical term, and they can go through that process of registering after that. But you want to make sure that you are completely off paper through that process. This is a state that has targeted people for the confusion in that law specifically, and so that's definitely somewhere where you want to make sure that you're reaching out to your lawyers and folks and make sure that you are walking through that process correctly.
Thank you. And then let's go ahead and tell people about 18-year-olds. Can I register before I'm 18, Charlie?
Only slightly. If you'll be 18, if you'll be 17 in 10 months, you can register to vote if you'll be 18 before that November election.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Okay, we've got two more questions, or one more. Dave, this is it, right? This is it, unless y'all are tied.
What is the score?
Hold on, you're not going to find out yet. You're not going to find out. I don't want additional
Don't
pressure
ruin
on Dave
it.
right
Don't ruin the
now.
drama.
What? That's yeah, okay. I want to know. Does this question even matter? Am I
Okay, fine.
chatting?
Fine. Jasmine, what is
Yeah,
the-
what's the score?
I can't decide if I'm being nice or if I'm being bullied by Dave right now.
Yeah,
There's no rules.
There are no rules.
There's
Okay.
no rules.
So what happened? Is there a chance for Dave?
If Dave gets this question right, Dave and Kirsten would be tied.
Okay, so now there's
Very suspenseful.
Hi, Dave. Hi,
Okay.
Good luck, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay.
I see.
This was our episode with Representative Aaron Zwiener, and it was on Passover. So the question was, the game was called, what would Jesus, a Republican, a Democrat, or a Passover Seder do? So I'm going to read you a quote, and you're going to tell me what's this.
There's a lot going on there.
And then finally, werewolf bar mitzvah. Okay.
Right.
Always the choice.
A lot of options.
I'm going to read you a sentiment or a quote, and you're going to tell me, is this in the Bible? Is this in the Republican or Democratic Party platform, or from the Passover Seder?
Okay.
Okay. And here it is. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares.
Okay, Passover doesn't have a lot of hospitality. It's like leaving. It's a lot of leaving and not hospitality. So I'm going to say not Passover, and I don't think either party platform would have that. So I'm going to go with the Bible for the tie.
Fuck yeah, Dave, you got it.
Yeah,
you got it. We're tied. And I did not expect this. So talk amongst yourselves while I pull up a tiebreaker.
Yeah, I wonder what we're going to do
no.
with the tie. Do we just split the award? Do we both get photos with Charlie?
Oh yeah.
I ask a tiebreaker, and if you both get both questions, then you tie. Unless
Okay.
there are no rules, and you know what? Maybe I win. Maybe.
I know. I was like,
You
am
get a
I in the
photo
runner?
with Charlie.
Okay, you know what? We're going to go back to season 2. I'm going to ask you a question from season 2.
Wow.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. Okay.
is a special
Season
episode.
2. We're going to look at, let's see what episode. We're going to look at Friday, May 21st.
Great day.
This was, I don't even know
You know what
who
year?
our
What
guest
year?
was. Church versus state. It was just last year. So just about a year ago.
Almost a year ago.
Okay, this
That's
is
a
going to
dark
be
time.
from a game called Church versus State. It's sudden, it's not sudden death. You each get a question and then we try again. Okay. Whew, this looks like a hard game.
Dave, I take back the good luck I wish you.
Okay.
These
Okay.
questions are tough, man.
They are. Okay.
I got the voting rights question. I'm gonna get fired.
Okay. Here we go, Kirsten. Prayer in schools is a popular topic right-wing politicians use to gear up their evangelical voting base. This may explain why State Rep Mays Middleton filed a bill, House Bill 2399, that would allow school districts to adopt which of the following policies? A, require the reading of Bible verses before school every day. Or B, require every campus in the school district to provide a period of prayer and readings from the Bible each day. C, would allow schools to rename themselves for Christian martyrs or saints. D, would allow school buildings to be used as places of worship outside of school hours and regularly scheduled events. So which one of those things did Rep. Mays Middleton want from House Bill 2399? Read Bible, period of prayer where you could read the Bible, allow schools to rename themselves for Christian martyrs or saints, or allow school buildings to be used as places of worship.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I don't like any of these options. Like
Jasmine, will you look up and
between
see
A
if
and
it passed?
I will.
Okay.
We go D. I think that one bothers me the least, maybe.
Okay. That's all right, but it's actually B, require every campus in the school district to provide a period of prayer and readings.
I think
Sounds
D
like
is
fun.
already the law. I think they can do that already.
What?
Really?
I'm
Extreme.
pretty sure.
I don't think you can use secular buildings for worship.
I'm pretty sure you can.
In
You like
rural
rent it
Texas,
out?
Okay. So you're saying like my Church of Satan can go to McAllen Middle School and be like, we're here. Get out. Get out of the art room, everybody. I got some things to draw. Okay. You can steal everything, Dave, here with a question from the same game. The recent coronavirus-related restrictions placed on religious gatherings have drawn the ire of many of Texas's evangelical Christians. In response, the state legislature has passed SJR 27, which would propose a constitutional amendment to do which of the following? A, prevent political subdivisions from prohibiting or limiting religious services. B, require all local political subdivisions to display the 10 Commandments. C, require all political subdivisions, which means like a town, a city, a mud, to quote Christian scripture before official meetings. Or D, require county courthouses to have a religious monument display similar to the one at the state capitol.
I think it's A, because I think they were like, we want to make a law that you can't tell people they have to wear a mask in church.
Dave, are you ready?
Oh, I may be.
I think you're right.
You may or may not have won the most knowledgeable comedian in Austin Award
Wow,
on the
wow.
finale. Oh, that was so
Whew.
hard fought. So
What a
hard
comeback.
Good game, Kirsten. That was great.
Thank you, Dave. I learned a lot.
Yeah, me
fought.
too.
So glad.
That's what matters.
Okay, everybody smile. Okay, you can stop now. All right.
Wow.
We'll give that to Charlie to post. I'd like you to know one thing. Apparently, while we were on air, there was an announcement at the airport that one of our listeners was at, and it said the person who lost a lady's phone in the bathroom, please return to the screening area. And I just want to know, like, what is a lady's phone? How do you know it's a lady's phone?
Really engaged
Yeah.
commentary there in the chats.
Well, there's also, damn, I just gave that trophy to Goodwill and various highs. So we're killing it. I mean, I dare say
Love it.
we're killing it right now. Congratulations, Dave. You are the final most knowledgeable
Wow.
comedian in Austin. Thank you.
Wow.
All right, what's
Yeah,
next?
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
By the way, Stephanie, that bill by Mays Middleton was referred to public education and never received a committee hearing.
Okay, good.
Yes. So now it's time to meet the man whose thesis, or a public, if you can Jeep it, was awarded the Lois Bayard Trice Prize for Creative Scholarship after he drove 10,000 miles across the country to interview strangers about democracy.
Hello, welcome, Charlie Bonner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
Wow.
Woo! Woo! Well, let's get right into it. What did people tell you?
Things are bad. That was the main takeaway. Yeah. Right before the 2018 election, I spent 2 months driving around and just going to small towns and coffee shops and restaurants and Trump rallies and everything in between, and just like talk to people about politics, which is probably the cool. Like, will always be the coolest thing I've ever done. But
Yeah.
what was really interesting is how interested people were in talking about politics. Kind of part of what we were looking at through it, the health of a democracy is only as good as people talking about politics. The whole thing is building a system for people to talk and debate and fight one another in a healthy way that is like not taking to the streets, right? And what I found is like people all across the country wanted to talk to me because they didn't want to talk to their friends or their family about it. They were like, oh, look at this. Someone coming into town that's going to leave tomorrow. Isn't that wonderful?
Right.
And so I only had one person like reject an interview in 2 months. Like everywhere I went, people were like, yes, we very much would like to be heard about what's going on right now. And it ranged for people, right? For some people, that was like super local corruption that was happening in places like Selma. For some people, it was like hyper national issues. People were like all getting it at a different place, but everyone wanted someone to talk to about it. And so I think a lot of what we're thinking about now is how do you create those spaces? What does that even look like in this time? How things have gotten so bad.
I'm trying to remember where you and I met. It was TFN, right?
I think that sounds right.
Okay, so talk to me
Shout
about
out to TFN.
TFN, Texas Freedom Network, which sounds like a right-winged organization, but it actually is not.
We don't let them own freedom, okay?
That's right. Okay, and Kirsten, I've muted you because I'm hearing some strange little feedback, so I'm just going to mute you right now. It's almost like you're at a rave. Like,
No,
can you
Like
hear
an
that little
alarm going
whistle?
off?
Yeah.
My dog had to use the restroom, but he's done. He's like 14, so I just opened the door for him to go out real quick. He's good.
Okay.
He's good.
All right.
We're back.
I thought, does he touch an alarm on the door and that's when you know to go let him out?
No, he just like looks at me and like whines a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Move.org focuses on increasing youth turnout. One of the games I was going to try to do was like, what's up with the youth? Who are the youth of Texas today and what are they
Wouldn't
doing?
I like to know?
Okay.
Right.
Because let me just say, I don't think they have great communication skills. And I'm not talking about Jasmine here. Okay. She's very good. She's very good.
It's the best.
So what are some of the challenges you see at move.org and getting...
Like, Move Texas, not move.org. We
sorry.
are separate, but they're great too. We love them.
Okay, awesome.
Move Texas, yeah, I think there's a lot of issues that we see across the board, but so much is often blamed on apathy. And what we really see is that young people don't have an apathy issue, they have an access issue. We have a system that is designed for old, rich, white landowners to vote and absolutely no one else, right? That we've gotten anybody else into the game is a miraculous feat, an act of revolution every day, that we are nearing a democracy that is as good as its promise, because we have never actually been there. When we look at some of the specific issues in Texas, things like not having online voter registration, like the vast majority of other states, for a young digital native generation, this is a like really big hindrance to how people get engaged. We also see a lack of polling stations near college campuses, that generally folks don't have good access to transportation, or they aren't on public transportation lines. There aren't great ways for young people to actually get to those polling locations. And so we've done things like bus people, partnered with Lyft and Uber and different groups to like make sure that we could get folks there. And then voter ID, as we talked about earlier, student ID, regardless of whether it comes from a public institution of the state, is not a valid form of ID to vote, even though it is in many other places. And a Texas handgun license is a valid form, which tells you everything you need to know about who this state is interested in voting and who they are not interested in voting.
I understand that your Sam's card is okay, but your Costco card is not.
Yeah, they're choosing winners. That's right.
That's next session. That's the fifth special of the next
Oh my
session.
God. Don't let me give them any ideas. I noticed on your website you have a list of kind of the history of voting. And I guess in like 1922, they pretty much just said Black people are not allowed to vote, period.
The all white primaries in Texas.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I could try.
Well, they were all white people.
They were all white people.
Okay.
It was specifically, and we think of like all the kind of mechanisms of this. And I think that actually is a really great timeline that we're actually turning into a TikTok. Stay tuned. So folks can really understand that what we're seeing right now is deeply connected to every bit of voter suppression that has been a part of this country forever. The all white primaries, I think, are important because they happened for Democrats and Republicans. And everybody has been part of this voter suppression scheme for a long time, right? We also know that both parties generally benefit from hyper-partisan gerrymandering, depending on where they are, right? And so I think it's important just to note that this is a like complicated, messy history. And what we're seeing right now is every bit as voter suppression as those fights that we've been through before.
What evidence do you have that these are not just hypothetical barriers to voting, but actual barriers? Because I love the ideas. Right. One thing they talked about this last session was closing polls on Sundays, right? Which is really big for the African American community because they souls to the polls.
Yeah.
Right. But is it just a progressive theory, or do we have evidence that these voter suppression mechanisms have influenced elections?
Yeah, yes, a lot of it.
Okay, and that's our show.
And that's that on that. No, there's been a great study over the past years of not just some academic studies, I believe from Penn, that were talking about really ranking by state how difficult it is to vote, what the actual voter experience is. And on those rankings, Texas ranks as the most difficult state in the country to vote and the costliest state in the country to cast a ballot. So you're thinking about things like how little public transportation there is in this state. How is a voter actually going to get to the polls if they don't have access to a car or access to public transportation, right? Getting that approved form of driver's license or many of the 7 different forms of ID there require you to have your birth certificate and have a copy made there that has cost associated with it. All these different levels of this process, sending in your vote by mail application and your ballot both require stamps in this state. The state does not do pre-postage. Like all of these things are like add up to the end to making a really complicated web for voters to actually engage in this process. And so there are those kind of physical barriers, right? But also, who wants to be involved in this system when everyone is telling them there is no place for it? right? If you are putting up all these barriers, the average person thinks, well, there must be barriers for a good reason. Like maybe
Ooh.
I don't need to be involved in this process, right? If we see what's happening with vote by mail right now, right? More than 20,000 vote by mail applications, ballots thrown out in the primary. Yes, it is critical. Every single one of those voters was impacted, but every single voter in the state is impacted by the fear that instills in them, that their vote doesn't matter, that even if they show up, the state can legally throw it out, that if they do everything right, the state is still going to put up these obstacles. And so there's a sense of hopelessness that comes with that. And to me, that is such a big part of the low voter turnout that we see here, is people don't have a belief that anything can change. And the conversations that we have, and why I really show up and do this work, is I think every single person who registers, single person who shows up to a protest, to cast a ballot, you're taking some control over your own life in the future of your community, for yourself, for your family. It's about ownership. It's about you owning the future of your community. And that matters regardless of who wins and loses. And it matters every single time that we have a sense of place here. We have a sense of belonging. We have a sense of ownership over our communities. We know that changes people's lives. And it's a sense of empowerment that no voter suppression law can take away.
There's actually, I'm gonna tell you a story. It's gonna be mostly wrong, but I'll look it up and figure it out later. There's a Holocaust survivor, and he tells this story about he's in the concentration camp and they're in the showers and there's no soap, but he sees this old man kind of like lathering up, and he says to him, "What are you doing?" Right? There's no point. There's no soap. And he's like, "But I'm not going to let them take this away." There's something about like going through the motions. And
yeah,
Dave, do you know what I'm trying to say better than?
Yeah, I mean, that's the story I've heard too.
Yeah, that it's just like, you don't let them take away, these very basic things. Yeah. So what are the solutions, Charlie?
There's a lot of them. Do I have a lot of optimism that this state is going to do anything to benefit voters? No, I do not. But
do you believe that they will overcome these barriers? Because if the movie Footloose taught me anything, it's just go across county lines to get what you need to get done, which is dancing.
Sadly, even across county lines, things still bad. Things are still bad.
All right.
I do think that we can overcome this. And I think there are legislative things that we can do down the road. We're involved in laws. There are lots of lawsuits happening right now, both of this law. And we have to remember that we have a new voter suppression law. We already had the most difficult state to vote in before that law was ever passed, right? Like, we're dealing with decades here. And so there's a lot of different levels to this fight. But I think what this moment really calls for is for us to show up as more than voters. It's no longer enough to be engaged and only show up on election day. We have to be the trusted sources on our elections that we wish the state was going to be, because they are not going to show up and help anybody navigate these laws. And so it's on us to read up on them, to make sure that people know on the vote by mail application and the ballot, they should put both their driver's license and their social security number. Even though it only asks for one, you should put both, because if it doesn't match what's in the file, they will throw it out. That is one of the things that we can all internalize and start having conversations about, so that our friends, maybe a young person who is registered to vote at home and is voting by mail because they're at college, our grandparents, folks who are older than 65, have a disability, folks that are trying to navigate this, it's on us now to help each other navigate this. Really, I think we go back to a mindset of where we were in the winter storm last year, a real moment when it seemed like no elected officials were coming to save us. They were not going to do anything for everyday Texans, and we watched them let people die for politics, right? But we showed up for each other. We showed up in community for one another again and again and again. And in that same spirit, we have to show up for each other now. And I think that means doing this and having these conversations. It means volunteering to be a poll worker so we can keep those polling locations open, to be an election judge, to get involved in this process. There really is never been a more important time to show up.
I'm just going to, yes, let's have this moment. Thank you. Never a more important time. What do you think would happen if we had a 95% participation rate in Texas voters?
I don't think that's good enough. I'm aiming for 100. That is what I'm going for. 100% eligible voters every time, right? And that, it's part of what we believe at MOVE, is that we are trying to build an electorate that represents the people who actually live here. this is a massively diverse state, but that is not necessarily reflected in the folks who show up and vote, right? And so as a result, we elect people who don't show up for our values, who don't show up for us, that don't feel accountable to us. In the vast majority of Texans, right? We're talking about millions of people. And so I think that our state would be fundamentally different if we were at 100% voter participation, because we would start to elect people who actually represent our communities instead of whatever the hell it is we have now.
Whatever the hell it is. Okay, so let's talk about the primary elections. And then right now we have a constitutional election. And honestly, what do you think it's going to be? 2%, 3% in the constitutional election?
You know, I like to look at the positive side.
Oh my God.
People are showing up. Our neighbors are turning out in droves to speak out on these constitutional amendments.
No, they are not.
If we dream it, we can do it, Stephanie.
No, not here. Charlie, you can't do anything. I will never climb Mount Everest, period. Full stop. No matter how much I dream about it. Okay. Isn't that a great story? So,
I was like, end of comment.
End. So what are you like right now? There's an election right now.
Yeah.
How are you turning out the vote right now? How are you getting kids to care about the Constitution and property taxes? And I do want to point out to everybody that you're going to save a whole $175. $175. So thank you, Dan Patrick.
Yeah,
That's like living expenses for a whole week. Thank you.
That was the big problem affecting us. You were absolutely right.
Yeah.
There are other things on the ballot also. In a lot of local communities, there are bonds. In Travis County, there's work here to decriminalize marijuana. That's a lot of the conversations that we're having with young people about the impact on your vote, on the things you already care about. Are these constitutional amendments a little difficult to get through? Yes. Like Snorefest? Absolutely. But we're doing the best we can to really break it down for people so that they have the best understanding of it. Some of my favorite projects that we've done for past constitutional elections, we run a program called Deep Cut the Vote, where we match deep cut songs with the deep cut amendments, the kind of B-side of elections that people don't normally know about. And so we match them and we come up with playlists that people can listen to while they go and vote, and break down all those propositions as they relate to these songs. It's a wonderful program that we've run for the past several constitutional amendments. So we're always thinking of something about how we can break this shit down for folks.
What brings you down? Because it sounds like nothing does, and I'm trying to think of something.
Oh, I'm like, everything, Stephanie. Things are bad, Stephanie. What are you talking about? I thought we were having like fun and games.
We were.
Tonight.
Remember earlier when we had all those funny games about abortion and immigrants? I mean, I haven't even talked about immigrants in a long time.
Yeah, things are bad here. It's not a great time to be a person who really loves Texas, as I do so much. I think last year was really difficult for people in the movement and for people that work in the Capitol and for people who watched the thing happen, right? Like, I think what we're seeing is evil. We are seeing cynicism. We are seeing like an all-out fight to hold on to power that is more important than people's lives. Like, that's the reality of this fucking state right now, right?
Yeah.
And that is a tough reality for people to sit with. But I have so much hope for the people that continue to show up. Last year was horrible, and we had many legislative sessions, particularly on our issues around voting rights, that lasted upwards of 24 hours. I had probably 5 or 6 all-nighters at the Texas Capitol staying with folks, and every single time more and more people showed up. Even in the middle of the night, there were that last legislative session, the last special where they eventually, unfortunately, passed that piece of legislation. There were more than 400 people who showed up to speak in opposition to that piece of voter spread from all over the state. And there was a couple there that had come down from Dallas and had their 2 small kids with them. And we had rooms full of activists trying to entertain the kids, bring them snacks and coloring books for what was a tremendously long day. And their parents finally testified at around 4:00 in the morning. The 2 kids are asleep in the back of the hearing room, but it was important for them to stay because they wanted to be able to tell their kids when everything was on the line, they showed up. They're just voters who wanted to show up and tell their story and speak out for what they thought was right, and they wanted to do it with their family. And there's something so powerful about that, because it doesn't matter what obstacles you put in those folks' ways, those people are showing up, and their kids are going to show up because they know that this is important and that's what their family does. And so having those sort of conversations, meeting those sorts of folks, does fill me with so much hope, even amidst the absolute chaos that we find ourselves in right now.
Bless your heart. What is one thing you wish people knew right now about voting and how important it is to show up at the Capitol?
Oh, just one thing.
One thing that the regular person doesn't know, that you and I and Jasmine know, and even Dave knows, and Kirsten is starting to know, like the average person who's sitting there,
Yeah.
like the person who's saying my vote doesn't matter, the first thing, what do we say to them? You know what? If it doesn't matter, why don't you just do it anyway? That's what I'm like, right?
If
Like,
it didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take your vote away.
Yeah.
They have spent millions of dollars over generations to silence you because you are powerful. And when you show up, things change. And I think that is so important for us. And I think that is grounded for me. And we have to remind ourselves that these elected officials work for us. They get to work in the shiny pink building, down Congress Avenue, but they work for us. We have hiring and firing ability. And so they're responsible to us. And that is a people's building. It is a public building. You can show up there and hold those folks accountable because they work for you. And I think we have to get back to that mindset instead of putting these folks on a pedestal, because regardless of what party they are, there's no elected official that's my hero. Okay. Like the people who show up are my heroes, and the people who hold them accountable are my heroes. But I'm not impressed just because you have the honorable before your title.
well, that's what we're trying to do here. Thank you, Charlie. Are there any questions from comedians or announcer for Charlie?
Yeah, I guess I've got a question. I think it was 2016 after the presidential election when Trump won. I think I had an idea, and I haven't done much in politics, but I was like, I feel like the world is so divided, like the US was so divided politically. And I was like, you know what I want to do? I just want to drive across America and talk to people about politics. But like, I was like, I don't know, what do you do? Like, do you write it down? Do you like write an article? Do you blog? Like, what do you even do? And I love that, like, that's literally what you did. I'm curious to hear, like, what did you do? Like, were you just like, cool, that was fun, and now I'm going to work for this nonprofit? Or were you like publicizing it? Or like, what was going around that?
Yeah. I actually, part of how we like engaged folks, I actually live blogged the thesis, which is not how most people write their thesis. Basically turned in a blog as a thesis.
Where can we still see it?
Yeah, I could send you an edited version that's probably a little better than what I wrote in like shitty coffee shops across this nation. But I had a real like community with me, which was really important because I was alone for 2 months.
Right.
And there were people from all over the country that were following it and commenting on it. Not like a massive thing, but folks who wanted to be invested in it, that wanted to try to have those conversations. And so, yeah, then we came back, and the whole point of it was to try to give, so often a thesis is really unapproachable or, overly academic. And I pitched them, and I was like, I want to write like basically a magazine style thesis that someone could pick this up and understand what these conversations were, what it meant, and try to look at like that health of the democracy through those conversations. And so thankfully, we got to have lots of them. People could read it. We had public presentations and stuff, and try to spur those conversations where we could. I still am sort of Insta friends with several people I interviewed along the way.
Okay, wait, you're Insta friends with people you interviewed, but we're still just like,
I'm like,
people you're on a podcast with?
You're my best friend. You're my girl, Steph. But yeah, it was an amazing trip. I'm constantly trying to figure out like who will give me money to do it again. Like, peace out. This is my next venture. I'm getting back in the car.
Well, that guy who like interviews people, like he was just talking, he's not the first guy who did it, but not Jordan Klepper, the other one. And he just interviewed people who said that they think actors play Joe Biden. And the woman's like, yes, Jim Carrey plays him. And when Biden fell down the stairs a bunch of times on the plane, that was Jim Carrey, like trying to make a joke. Like, I think you could do that. I think we could find a way to fund you to do that.
I'm like, let's get it going. Let's get it going.
Maybe Over the Ledge could fundraise to send you
Listeners,
across Texas to do
My
that.
Venmo is.
I have one more follow-up question, Charlie. That's so cool. So I think something that I feel like I'm missing is I feel like I live in my like bubble, right? I talk to people and they're all like, yeah, this is so messed up, blah, whatever, liberal, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like one thing that I think I would be good at, and I think I'm generally okay at, is like talking to people who disagree with me without being like, you're a monster, you should leave. Like I like talking to people who disagree with me. I think it's like difficult, and I think it helps me, and I think it helps them. And I have looked, like, but I guess I don't know the venue. I don't know where, without being like, hey, I overheard your conversation. I don't think people should have AK-47. You know, like, I don't know the place to be like, I want to discuss this, and I want you to challenge my views, and I want to challenge your views, but also I want us to have a hot dog and just be like, yeah, how about those Astros? You know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, it's something that we like think about and like have conversations about a lot, because I think a lot of the avenues that are created for this, like that are political, are like, you're like self-selecting who's coming into that in a way that's like not particularly interesting. And this isn't like a great answer, but I think it is like the friendship has to come first. The trust has to come first, right? If you're like really going to have that conversation in a productive way. And I think it is about, you know, how do we, and I'm thinking about this all the time because it was actually really easy for me to have a lot more conservative friends when I worked at the Capitol. They're crawling with them. But I also had a really, you know, naive sort of belief. The hallway I worked on at the Capitol was our Democratic office, and all members of the Freedom Caucus was our entire hallway, Freedom Alley. And so I spent a lot of time in these places, and I also thought, you know, maybe there's an off chance that I could convince one of these people to like me as like a human person.
Right.
And eventually their boss is going to have to vote on some bigoted piece of legislation that's going to like directly impact my life. And my only hope is that at the end of all of this, I am somewhere in the back of them, and their love for me might spur them or give them pause to push back on their boss to do that sort of thing, because they liked me as a person, not because they liked my politics or because I tried to sell them on it. You know, it's because I wanted to be their friends, and I was like, hey, do you want to learn about how Grindr works? I'm like, I see that you don't know any other gay people. Would you like to learn more? And maybe that's a naive thing, but I think maybe in the long run, hopefully some of those people are in power somewhere one day, and we can push this a little bit further.
Kirsten or Jasmine?
Well, so I do have one question. During the pandemic and the ice storm, one thing that I realized was like the importance of community and the importance of voting regularly and not just the presidential election. So I made like a permanent New Year's resolution to vote in every election. But it's tough. Well, it's tough because this time around, I've made all of them. I didn't realize there was an election going on in Austin until yesterday. Someone posted it on Instagram. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known.
Two this month, and they're separate.
See, and I just learned about that one right now. So my question is, if you're someone who is dedicated yourself, and quite frankly, it's not because I love it. I'm not big on politics, but I think it's like my duty as a community citizen. If you want to make sure you're voting regularly, what should I follow to make sure that I'm showing up and doing the proper research beforehand, et cetera?
Yeah, totally. Well, you can go to movetexas.org. If you sign up for our email list, we put out reminders of everything you need to know about an election every single time there's an election. The League of Women Voters is always a great resource too. Their website, Vote 411, is where you can put in your address and see what your entire ballot is. That's another great way. And I think they have updates that you can sign up for there, that they'll send you text updates. Rock the Vote also does great text updates if you sign up on their website nationally. I just got mine last week. That was like, reminder, there's an election in your area. So lots of great resources, and all the socials for Move. We have lots of artists that we work with that try to make things a little better than the state's doing them, to try to communicate to people about what's going on.
Perfect.
All right,
I'll go get on it then.
Yes, and
We
I'm
got
right
you.
here, Kirsten. You know people now. You know people. I will say I knew there was an election coming up, but I just happened to be in a shopping center where there was a vote sign, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's time." And I'm gonna
Mhm.
tell you a little side note. So they give you those little finger condoms to vote.
The best.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Love
so
those.
I just threw mine in the bottom of my car, as I do with all my trash. My mom got into the car the other day, and she looks down and she's like, "Oh, is there something you need to talk to me about?"
It's like a very little.
It's so little.
So-
And then she was like, "It's okay to advocate for yourself, Steph. It's okay to get."
I love
more."
her.
She's wonderful. All right, Jasmine, take us home. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Charlie. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thank you so much to our special guests, Charlie Bonner, Dave Ronn, and Kirsten Anderson. Charlie, where can people find you next?
If you really must, you can follow me on Twitter at Charlie K. Bonner. I warn against it. Stephanie did not give a roaring endorsement today of my content. So,
It's very knowledgeable. It's very
she's your own
informative.
adventure. She's
It's
your own
just not-
adventure.
Yeah. Okay. What about the thing called TikTok?
No,
No, I thought you said you were on it.
absolutely not.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm gonna
I'm the
make
oldest
something-
26-year-old alive. No, it's over my head. I don't even get it. I don't understand.
All right.
Dave, where can people find you next?
I do some improv comedy at Merlin Works. If you go to merlin-works.com, you can usually find me doing a weekend show.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Kirsten, where can people find you next?
Yeah, so Kirsten Anderson _comedy. I post whatever I'm up to on there.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our Over the Ledge benevolent empress, Stephanie Chiarello.
Thank you. Thank you.
Benevolent.
She wrote that. Thank you to our sound engineer, Tom Booker. Just remember, Tom Booker loves you.
Thanks Jasmine. Thanks to Jasmine Owen for guiding us through this episode. This was her
Legend.
first announcer gig, right?
Nailed
So
it.
let's really
Very good.
even ask me for the
Great.
script in advance. Dedicated. I think one day we're going to be like, I knew her when. And a second thank you to our sponsors. Thank you very much. We couldn't do this without you.
And that's our show. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and now TikTok as @OverTheLedge. See you September 16th through 18th at the Long Center.
Bye. Bye. Okay, so let's go back to who's had sex in the Capitol.
It's still live.
I know.